The tweet just screams, "It's real and it's out." Our very first peer-reviewed journal article. In Terrorism and Political Violence, we analyze the memes of the far right and militia groups centered around the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings. And I saw that and I said, oh, I got to get my paws on this somehow. So guess what? A good friend, Rebecca Johnson, she emails it to me. Thank you, Rebecca. And I've been enjoying it ever since. And you will too, but not for the right reasons. Let's read a little bit further down. And according to this, Hampton, who's one of the co-authors, he knows the militia movements and their subculture like the back of his hand. Yeah, well, I know the Kenosha shootings like the back of my hand. We'll have a battle of the wits, and we'll see who comes out on top here. Check out his breakdown of the paper and our main findings. Let's take a look at that. In our article on the Rittenhouse meme community, we used mixed techniques to sample online discourse, manual selection from militia plus 2A pages, Second Amendment, automated scraping of relevant tweets, deduplicated and removed irrelevant images. We ended up with 259 unique memes. Wow, so many. And he's got a collection there of some of those Kyle Rittenhouse memes and all that. He said he used a framework to assess mimetic content, determined mean as both comprised of constituent elements and forming part of a larger ensemble online. Who talks like this? I guess they do. Here's a figure to represent that. Enough of that.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
All right, so here's the article, Terrorism and Political Violence. And let's read the title here. Kyle Rittenhouse and the shared meme networks of the armed American far right. An analysis of the content creation formula, right-wing injection of politics, and normalization of violence. Looks great, except you're supposed to capitalize right-wing. You have a typo in your title. I mean, like, what the hell were you thinking? I mean, you had 3 authors on this thing. And you also had to go through a peer review process. Nobody picked up on this? Oh, geez. It's in the title. All right, let's go on down here. Now, in the introduction, they have to first talk about Trump, because the way to really get to Kyle is you have to connect him to Trump. That's what gets the blood flowing in these readers on the far left. And make no mistake about it. The readership of this is going to be on the left side of the political spectrum. So he starts off by talking about Trump and the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol. I have very little interest in that, so we'll kind of skip over that. But keep in mind, again, whenever they write about Kyle, they always have to mention Trump. So let's skip on down here. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and remove myself so that you can see the entire text. This paper provides an analysis of the meme environment in several U.S.-based far-right online spaces surrounding the August 25th, 2020 Kenosha shooting by Kyle Rittenhouse, an instance of lethal violence for which the young man was acquitted of all charges in November of 2021. And you can tell that they really didn't want to mention anything about the acquittal, but you kind of have to. And of course, where are they getting this information that he was acquitted? Well, everybody knows it, but they even had to cite it. And guess what? I went and looked at it already. It's National Public Radio. Okay. So keep in mind, this was written after the acquittal. So the trial has taken place, and that's going to be very important to remember when we look at their bibliography. We define a meme in our paper using Merriam-Webster's colloquial definition of a meme, an amusing or interesting picture, video, etc., that is spread widely through the internet. And what do they mean by using Merriam-Webster's colloquial definition? That means they typed in Google, what is a meme? And the definition popped up. That's exactly what happened. And if you don't believe me, well, take a look. Go to citation number 3, and it says, definition of meme, ND. No date. I mean, really? You couldn't cite a source for a definition? And why not at least tell us when you access that definition online? Because you might have accessed it many years ago, in which case the definition may not apply any longer. Further discussions of what is a meme, a la Dawkins and others, are beyond the scope of this paper. Our data set of 259 memes indicated a high level of support for violence, particularly against the meme creators' political adversaries. Well, who in the hell else would it be against? One of the things that struck me as so interesting about this paper was how they could take what everybody already knows and make it sound like this is a major, profound discovery. The memes reference each other by using similar aesthetics, macros, and iconography, reference real-world events by integrating imagery from current news events, and attach memes to channels about these events using tags and other platform-based metadata. Yeah, okay. This contextualizes the real-world event through the lens of their group's political and socio-cultural ideologies and narratives. By propagating a network of memes that contextualizes events through the aesthetics, iconography, and narratives of these various social and political groups, groups grow a knowledge base which links to both similar fringe knowledge bases as well as more mainstream knowledge bases, ecosystems, ecologies. Who talks like this? But that's okay. I know you're getting bored. You're thinking, oh crap, man, I didn't tune into the Johnny Walker Dread show to listen to a whole bunch of this pseudo-intellectual verbiage. Well, hang on a second. We're going to get to it right now. They're going to love this part, I guarantee you. Now, here it goes. In August 2020, a white officer on the police force of Kenosha, Wisconsin, shot an unarmed black man, 29-year-old Jacob Blake, 7 times in the back as he stepped back into his car. Right away, we get all kinds of untruths, right? He was not unarmed, and he wasn't stepping back into his car. He had just got done basically assaulting a couple of police officers, stepping away from a taser. He pulled the taser prongs out, grabbed a knife that he had dropped, and went to get into his car when they shot him. This notion he was stepping back into his car? No. That didn't happen. So why are they calling him unarmed? He had a knife. That's armed. Whether you intend to use it on somebody or not is not relevant. If you have a knife, you're armed. See, I can do research just like those guys. All I have to do is just type in, what does armed mean? And guess what? It says equipped with or carrying a weapon or weapons. Was Jacob Blake carrying a weapon? Yes, he was. He was armed. And this truth is unassailable because we use the same search method that they used to define meme. Police allege that Blake was carrying a knife with the intent to cause harm, a fact that Blake disputes, saying he was attempting to put the knife into the vehicle after it fell from his pocket. In response to this shooting, another wave of unrest erupted in Kenosha. This event led to a resurgence of anti-police demonstrations after multiple waves of protests followed the police killings of George Floyd in May 2020. Now, keep in mind, the police never alleged that Blake was carrying a knife to cause harm. That wasn't their claim. Their claim was he was carrying a knife. He was getting into a car and he had a knife. He has committed a felony. He is armed. He's trying to escape, and he's got 3 captive kids in the back seat. Now, they're not captive in the sense that he had kidnapped them, but they're captive in the sense that these kids can't go anywhere. They're in the back seat, and he's going to drive off with them. The police shot him because they didn't know what he was going to do with the knife. Not that he was going to cause harm with it. They didn't know. And in that case, guess what? You can open fire. Now, keep in mind, you're also wondering, like, why are they going into this detail about whether Blake was a good guy or bad guy? It's not relevant at all to this paper. Whether or not Blake was a bad guy or not makes no difference as far as this paper is concerned. But this is the bias. They're trying to set up Blake as a guy who was unjustly shot by the police, and therefore the people rioting, well, they had a good reason to. No, they didn't. The police investigated, and they found that the officer was justified in his shooting. No mention of that anywhere here. Protests remained mostly peaceful. Boy, have we heard that one before. But some nighttime demonstrations resulted in riots that led to property destruction. Oh, how about a lot of property destruction? How about massive property destruction? Wholesale property destruction? No, they're not going to say that. They're going to just say, well, property destruction, like got some fences kicked over, somebody stole some mailboxes and things like that. Again, they're going to downplay anything negative about the left here. These are very biased authors, and you're sensing it already. Ahead of one such night, a loose network of armed Facebook activists calling themselves a militia put out a call to action for any armed locals to join them to provide security for businesses in Kenosha. It wasn't a militia that put out the call to action. It was one man. It was Kevin Matthewson. The Facebook muster call put out by the so-called Kenosha Guard drew massive levels of engagement. Oh, now they use the word massive here. Okay, so massive levels of engagement, that's fine. Massive property destruction, oh no, we can't call it that. And the sentence ends, from its early morning posting until multiple hours after the fatal shooting in the evening. By the way, we should probably take a look at these citations here, 6, 7, and 8. We have a CBS, looks like a video. We have also the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which has failed to get anything right throughout the entire ordeal. Can anybody tell me what the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel has ever gotten right? Remember the hit piece they had where they had this dude named Jeremiah that claimed that he witnessed the shooting and all that? Yeah, you didn't hear any more about Jeremiah after that, did you? Once it was proven that he couldn't have possibly have seen it. And then we have The Verge and BuzzFeed News. Oh yeah, this is very scholarly, everybody. I mean, their literature search just simply amount to nothing more than Google searches. And whatever web page popped up first, they just clicked on it. If it was relevant, they cited it. One responder to this call was 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, coming from just over the state line in Illinois. And I know what you're all thinking, that's a bunch of horse manure. You're absolutely right. There's no evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse answered the call from the Kenosha Guard. Furthermore, this makes it look like he heard about this call and then drove over the state line to go to Wisconsin. But those of us who've actually followed the story know that he was already in Kenosha when the riots broke out and Kevin Matthewson posted his call for arms. And why do we know that? Because we actually followed the news. On the night of August 25th, 2020, following altercations between Black Lives Matter protesters and pro-police militia groups, gee, there's no bias there, Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 people, killing 2. The first, Joseph Rosenbaum, was an unhoused man. He's homeless, okay? Can't we just say that he was homeless? Oh, get this. This is really good. Was an unhoused man who wandered into the protests after being discharged the same day by a local hospital following a pair of suicide attempts. And of course, they're going to now talk about the fact that Joseph Rosenbaum clearly ambushed Kyle, right? They're going to talk about Joseph Rosenbaum chasing Kyle and trying to get a hold of Kyle's rifle, right? No, they're not going to mention that at all. They're going to move on to the next shooting because that kind of detail's not important. I love that. Wandered into the protests. Yeah, that's Joseph Rosenbaum, all right. He was just wandering around. The hospital discharged him and he had nowhere to go. And he's just walking around and, oh my gosh, there's a protest. I can't believe I walked into one of these. In these guys' minds, that's what happened. Never mind the fact that Joseph Rosenbaum is a violent son of a bitch. We won't mention that at all. And the authors of this paper, if you try at any point to discredit that notion, I will prove you wrong. All right, we move on here. He subsequently shot Anthony Huber in the chest as Huber swung a skateboard at him, killing Huber. Let's not mention the fact that while Kyle was running to the police, where everybody could see the police down the street, Kyle is not threatening anybody. He's just trying to make it to the police. Anthony Huber tried to kill him by hitting him in the back of the head with his skateboard. And then, when it didn't work, he grabbed his skateboard and he tried it again. And that's when old Kyle dispatched Anthony Huber. Finally, Rittenhouse shot and wounded a third man armed with a pistol, Gage Grosskreutz. Let's not mention that Gage pointed his pistol at him as he testified under oath. And so one of the things we want to look at is here, we have citations 9, 10, and 11. Let's take a look at those. Number 9 is a Fox News video, it looks like. And then we go to CNN.com and another CNN.com. In other words, another Google search. But here's the problem. This was published in a scholarly referee journal. We had a trial where witnesses went on the stand and testified under oath what happened. Why are we not citing those sources? We have court documents like the criminal complaint and the motion hearings. All those are official documents that we could use to build up a really good understanding of what happened that night. Instead, they go on, they type in Google search, Kyle Rittenhouse shooting, and whatever pops up on the list, they click on it, and then they just cite it. This is extraordinarily sloppy. Also, I should mention here that those two guys were not the only ones that tried to kill him. We also had a third person that Kyle took a shot at, and there was at least probably a dozen people that were chasing him at some point. No mention of any of that. Rittenhouse claims to be fervently pro-police. Oh my God, what a terrible person. Prior to the shootings, police officers thanked him and threw him and a group of armed men water bottles, saying, "We appreciate you guys, we really do, and I have no idea why you would include that in this article. It has nothing to do with the content." This is about the memes generated around Kyle Rittenhouse. How the police thanked him has no bearing on anything. But you see what they're doing here. They're trying to rile up their readership, which is the left, into a anti-police, pro-BLM fervor. Rittenhouse's relationship to law enforcement precedes the shooting. Rittenhouse attended a police-affiliated youth group. Oh, you can hear the readers going, ooh, oh my God, he likes the police. He's even joining a youth group like Hitler Youth that familiarizes youth with careers in law enforcement. Through the program, Rittenhouse participated in ride-alongs and training. Again, why is this relevant? He routinely posted on his social media his support for police, shared Blue Lives Matter memes, posting about firearms, and affiliating himself with police. Now keep in mind, the alt-right groups that they're actually focusing on in this paper are not pro-police. So why is any of this important? Why are we trying to establish that Kyle was pro-police when the people that this paper focuses on are not friends of the police? It makes no sense. But again, the audience is going to be very anti-police, and they're playing to the crowd. By the way, get ready to be really angry. Here we go. Rittenhouse told journalists ahead of the shooting that we don't have non-lethal when discussing how he might respond to the unrest. That may be the most disingenuous statement in the entire paper. Are you kidding me? Rittenhouse told journalists that we don't have non-lethal, sure, because he was asked whether he had lethal. Rittenhouse had just been gassed, and they asked, do you have any non-lethal to retaliate? And Kyle said, we don't have non-lethal.
We're protecting from the citizens, and I just got pepper sprayed by a person in the crowd.
So you had non-lethal, you didn't respond.
We don't have non-lethal.
So you guys are full on ready to defend the property.
Yes, we are. Now, if I can ask, can you guys step back? Medical, EMS right here. I am an EMT. I am an EMT.
There's a medic right here if you need help.
What is it? She got shot in the foot. Shot in the shot? All right, we're going to go over here behind cover.
It wasn't a brag, but notice how he puts it in here. We don't have non-lethal when discussing how he might respond to the unrest. Oh, by the way, take a look at the headline here for this article. This was from NPR. If you're wondering what the bias of NPR is, read this. Kenosha shooting suspect fervently supported Blue Lives, joined local militia. Kyle was never a member of a militia. He never joined a militia. He went to the protest where militia were. That's not the same as joining them. And of course, this is an article written August 27th, 2 days after the shooting. They couldn't find anything more recent? Shortly after his involvement in the shooting, conservative press praised Rittenhouse's actions. Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson heralded Kyle as maintaining order. Conservative pundit Ann Coulter said she wanted Rittenhouse as her president. Rittenhouse also openly affiliated with groups such as the Proud Boys. They came to him while he was inside a bar and they posed for pictures with him. That's not an affiliation. And as far as the white power signs go, I highly doubt that he knew what that hand symbol meant. Why would he know? They looked through his social media involvement and found no signs whatsoever that he was involved in alt-right anything. He was mostly playing video games. These shootings immediately became an important cultural artifact, conservative media, and its consumers. Well, what about the left? The left didn't make these shootings a cultural artifact? Rittenhouse posted a $2 million bond in part due to donations from conservative businessman Mike Lindell, who financed a conspiracy documentary about election fraud, Irrelevant. A fundraising campaign raised money on behalf of Rittenhouse before its progenitors left for election conspiracy-related endeavors. Rittenhouse may have even become a living martyr. I don't think I understand how anybody can be a living martyr for his involvement in the fatal shootings. The August 25, 2020 shootings have therefore become an important social fulcrum for militant right-wing movements in the United States, as Rittenhouse simultaneously fits the role of patriotic actor and legal victim. He fills this symbolic niche across American right-wing identities, and his actions are used to create and affirm group identity. In this study, memes about Rittenhouse are documented, put through a descriptive workflow, and then analyzed to demonstrate this dynamic. All right, I've had enough for tonight. I'm going to do the rest of it in part 2. But keep in mind, this was published in a scholarly referee journal. Nothing cited from any kind of court documents. Nothing cited from the trial, where people are placed under oath to tell the truth, where rock-solid questions are asked of people. Nothing. It's all USA Today, CNN, Fox News, and a bunch of online newspapers. Anything that Google would pump out. And of course, when you rely on those kind of sources, you tend to get things wrong. And they have made a lot of mistakes about what happened in Kenosha that night. So stay tuned for part 2, where I'm going to dive into their methodology, and that's pretty interesting, and go over their conclusions, which, well, let's just say that we could have written that section without the need for any research. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.